Hello everyone and welcome to the next part in the Blender tutorial. In this part we're gonna tackle animating, so let's get started. First thing I need to do is to add every drawer that I don't have yet, as well as the doors. So we're just gonna join objects so we can animate it properly. Best way to do this is to already set the vertex groups before joining it. What I mean is this handle is going to be part of this drawer, but this drawer is not going to be part of the rest, so this is going to be its own vertex group, which makes it possible to animate it on its own. So this is going to be connected to a bone, and that bone is going to animate it. You'll see what I mean in a second. We're gonna join these two first. We're gonna add a vertex group called drawer 1. And for the drawer itself, so that was the handle, but for the drawer itself we're gonna do the same. So the exact same name. So when you join these two together, it's gonna be all connected into one. Now because this whole object is gonna be in one vertex group, it's easier to just join them first and then put everything together. So we're just gonna tap into edit mode. We're gonna select everything using A or twice A if you have already something selected. And then we're gonna select the vertex groups, which is already selected because it's the only one, and assign it. Now you can test it out if it worked correctly, because if you deselect everything and you select the vertex group and then press select, you will see that everything lights up. Now we're going to do the same for these other drawers, so we're just going to duplicate them now. And the reason I'm setting up these vertex groups first is because it's easier to set them up while they're still separate objects, because if you join them all together and then you're going to start creating vertex groups, it's a little bit trickier. It's still doable, I will show you later on, because you're not always going to have those separate objects. But for these other two objects we're going to change the vertex group name, because they're different drawers. So now we have 3 different vertex groups, and if we check it out, then yeah, they're still connected. Now we're gonna do the same with the door. We're gonna have 2 separate doors. So we want this handle and the door and the mirrored version of it as 2 separate objects. So let's start with this door. Now I generally just use left and right, but from my point of view, so this is the right door. Join these two together, select everything and assign. Let's see if it worked. Yep. Now, best way to mirror it is using the mirror modifier, obviously. So we're going to use that. Now, because the origin point is in this door, you can see that it mirrors over this door. That's not what we want. So we can add an empty and just a plain axis empty. This doesn't do anything but adjust modifiers. So for example, for this door, we just have to make sure that it's on the x-axis correctly, because we're only going to mirror it over the x-axis. So you go to the mirror modifier and you select the mirror object, which is currently the only empty in the scene. And there we go, that's mirrored, but it's not completely correct because we don't want anything in between. So best way to do that is select all the left vertices, Shift S for the snap dialog, and cursor to selected. No, that's not correct. I also selected some of the handle, and that's not what we want. Cursor to selected, and then select the empty and press selection to cursor. So now it's mirrored, but as you can see here, it's not completely covering the opening of the cabinet. So to fix that, we're gonna move some vertices around. And because it's still mirrored, if I move these one a little bit up to the right side, you can see that the same happens on the left side. And if we just move it all a bit to the left as well, then it should be covering everything. Same happens a little bit for the top. As you can see here, this black line is the opening, and this is the door. So the door is not completely covering it, so we're just gonna open it a little bit more. Same goes for the bottom. There we go. Now we're gonna apply the modifier. We're not gonna merge, because merging means that vertices on the exact center of the mirror is gonna be combined, and that's not what we want. If we merge it now, then the two doors are gonna be one object. So we're gonna deselect merge, and then we're gonna apply it. Now you can go into edit mode, and because we already created the vertex groups, every vertex is gonna be on the door right vertex group. We want to add another one, the left door, and here is where I can show you how you select parts of an object inside an object. Best way to do that is, because they're still separate objects, that's what we make sure using the mirror modifier. If you hover over an object and press L, it's gonna select everything of that object. As you might still remember, the handles are also separate objects, so they're not actually part of this door. So it's gonna be the same for this handle. So if you hover over it and press L, you will see that it selects every vertex that is part of that object that you hover over it. What we want to do is remove the left door from the right door vertex groups and add it to the left door vertex group. You do that by hovering over the left door, pressing L, hovering over the left handle, and again pressing L. Now you got this whole door selected, as you can see when I move it. Now we want to remove it from the right door, so remove, and we want to assign it to the left door. And now if you select this one, then it only selects the right door, and if you select this one, it only selects the left door. Final thing we need to do for vertex groups is creating a static vertex group. We need to do that because the Thememaker toolkit wants to assign every vertex to a vertex group, or actually to a bone. But some vertices should just be static, like this whole cabinet, or maybe we're gonna move it around a little bit, but it's still gonna be part of one last vertex group. So we're gonna just call it static for now and assign every vertex to it. Now the drawers, the doors, and the cabinet itself is all of these vertices are now assigned to a vertex. So now we can join it all together. We select everything and ending with the cabinet, and press Ctrl J. This will combine every object, every drawer and every door to one object, and as you can see, all the vertex groups have also been merged together. If you tap into it now, you can see that it's all one object, but if you select static, then it's only gonna select the cabinet, If you're gonna press door right, then it's only gonna select door right. Now this is very important for when you want to animate, because the Thememaker toolkit does not accept animations directly applied to mesh objects. So we're gonna need to use bones. Before we're gonna add bones, we're just gonna set the scale right, because otherwise the animation is not gonna work properly. The Thememaker toolkit requires you to set the scale pretty high, otherwise you get errors that says the scene and the objects are too small. So that's what we're gonna do now. I'm gonna go to the tab for scene, then go to units, set it to metric and set it to 0.01. Now as you can see now, the grid is very large and the object is very small suddenly. You can also see that the object dimensions are suddenly centimeters. So we're gonna need to scale it up. Because I increased the scale by 100, we're gonna also scale up by 100. So press S and type 100, enter. Now it's once again 1.4 meters, what it was before. To make it work correctly, we're gonna apply the scale. So these numbers are gonna be 1 again. Control A and scale. And now we're good to go. Now we're gonna add an armature. An armature is basically a collection of bones and is generally used for rigging characters. But we're gonna use it for this one. We're gonna scale it up a bit, or we're actually gonna scale it up by about 100. Apply that scale as well. And we're gonna start off with the static bone. Now to make sure that the vertex groups are being influenced by a bone, you have to make sure that the vertex group name, so in this case the static, is also the bone name. So over here you have the object, then the armature, and then the bone, and that's the hierarchy in an armature, as you can see here as well. So we're gonna name the bone static. So now every vertex that is in the vertex group static is gonna be moved by this bone. Now this bone is gonna be static, like the name said, so we're not gonna actually move this. But it always has to be connected to something. So now we're gonna add another bone. This is gonna be for the drawer. So we're gonna shift D for duplicate. And we're gonna rotate it over the x-axis. So we're gonna line it up with the drawer. To make sure it's really in the center, we're gonna select the vertex group of the drawer. And then Shift S and cursor to select it. Then we're gonna go back to the bone, select the bone, Shift S, selection to cursor. And then we're gonna push it back in. Now it's completely in the center of the drawer, and that's useful for when you want to animate it. When you want to animate bones, you're going into pose mode, and as you can see the color changed. When it's this color, then you can actually animate. If you're animating while using the object mode, you're actually animating the whole armature, the object, and not the separate bones. But as you might notice, if I go in here and start to move this one, it doesn't move the drawer. There's two reasons. One, I haven't changed the name correctly yet. So we're gonna change that to drawer 001. And we have to make sure that this object knows that that armature is for him. So we're gonna set the parent on armature and parent type also armature. If we move the bone now, you can see that it actually moves, but it also moves another vertex that we don't want it to use. There are two possible solutions for that. One is that some of the vertices are actually in that same group, but I'm pretty sure that we've set it up correctly. We're just gonna check for sure. So we're gonna select drawer 1 and move it out. And now you can see that even though it really is just drawer 1, it still moves those vertices. So something else is going on. So we're just gonna move this back by Ctrl Z. And the other thing that's mostly the problem with this is inside bone. And deform, there's a setting called envelope. And as you can see here, it's on 12. If we put that back to 0, then you can see that it's working correctly again. What envelope does is actually grabbing more vertices than it actually should. It grabs vertices around that bone that he can reach within that distance. But we don't want it. We just want that bone to only influence that vertex group. Now we can just put it back on 0. And let's just create the bones first and then start animating. Those are the drawers. Make sure that the bones are named correctly. You can test it out by moving them. There we go. And now for the doors. We want the pivot point of the doors to be on both sides. So we're just gonna add the bones first. And we're gonna make sure that it's on the right position by selecting the door. But we're just gonna remove some of the selection, so that we can put the bone in the right place. Push it down a bit. You can actually scale it down a bit as well. There we go. Just have to see in a second if that's what we want. So let's see. Name it correctly. And start rotating. There we go. I think that pivot point is fine. Yeah. So let's do that for the other one as well. Select the other door. Remove some of the selection by using C for the brush selection and pressing the middle mouse button to remove select. There we go. Shift S, cursor to selected. And let's just duplicate this one. Selection to cursor and push it down. Now because it's the set rotation that you're actually doing, it doesn't really matter if it's over here or over here because the rotation is gonna be the same. But we're gonna, for order's sake, just get it as close as possible as the other one. There we go. That's fine. Let's name it correctly. Door left. And there we go. That one works as well. Let's do some actual animating. We've got a lot of options here, obviously, a lot of choices and possibilities. I'm gonna create some animations that will also show off some tricks that you can use. I'm gonna make it jump a little bit forward a couple of times and then make the drawers move and the doors as well. You'll see what I mean. So it actually looks like something is inside the cabinet. So first thing we want to do for that is we want to use the static bone actually to make the whole cabinet move, because we're going to push it a little bit forward. But if you move it now, you see that really only the cabinet moves and not the doors nor the drawers. And that's because the parenting is not set right. We want to parent every bone to the static object, so that when we move the static object, every other bone moves as well. So we select everything, and finally end with the static bone. Then press Ctrl P and make it a parent, but keep the offset. If you put connected here, it will connect every bone to the static bone, and that's not what we want. So we want to parent it, but keep the offset so that they're actually staying where they are. But if you move the static bone, then all the other bones will move as well. This really is a lot of trial and error, and actually knowing the software better gets you a better control over what you want. But let's start by moving it a bit forward and a bit up. So we're gonna add keyframes. I'm gonna start at 0. We're also gonna push the window to 0 to 250 for now. As a reference, the current frame rate is 24 FPS, which means that if we put this on 240, then this timeline is exactly 10 seconds. Now for Planet Coaster, 24 frames per second is plenty. You can take it all the way up to 60, for example, but that's really not necessary. It's not going to make the movement more fluid, because Planet Coaster itself will also intermediate between keyframes as well. So let's start by putting a couple of keyframes on 0, on frame 0. We do that by pressing I while hovering over the certain properties. Just as a quick example, if I put it on 24 frames now, and I'm gonna move it forward, and I press I once again while above the location property, then it will animate that over 1 second, because 24 frames per second makes it that this is 1 second. I really don't want it to be pushed that much forward, so I'm just gonna go over here, take about half a second, and it's gonna land somewhere over here. Press I for every property, and now we're gonna actually make it move upward. So we're gonna go on frame 3 and push it up about 8 centimeters and rotate it a bit towards where it's going. There we go. Get those keyframes ready again, and if we play it now, it's not exactly what I want. I kinda miss the certain jump effect, because when something jumps, then the momentum starts really fast. So that's what we want to emulate, as well as the landing is way too smooth. So we're gonna fix that by going into the graph editor, and in the graph editor you can change the keyframes in a way that will emulate what I want. So for now we're just gonna look at the Y location, so just hide all the others. We're gonna select the first keyframe, and we're gonna drag it like this. So now you get more that sudden movement of a sudden jump. Possibly need to move this one a bit more to the left. But like I said, this is the part where it gets really trial and error. You just adjust till you get what you want. Now to have that falling down again, I could do it like this. I'm actually going to use a trick here, and it's in the interpolation. This is the default interpolation. You can also, for example, use linear or a constant, and a constant means that it's really just like this. But you can also use bounce. Now you can already see what's happening here. It falls down and it bounces a little bit. So let's see how that affects the animation. So the sudden push upward and the bounce back. It gets a little bit better. But it's going too far. So we're just gonna grab this frame and we're gonna push him back a little bit. Don't forget to keyframe it. And I also think the tilting is a bit much. So we're gonna go to this frame and rotate it a little bit back. There we go. That looks better. Yeah, that will do for now. This is also a good moment to make the doors do something. So when it's being pushed forward, you can also open up the doors a little bit. Now because the animation of the doors is only gonna be this rotation, I tend to use the XYZ Euler rotation mode instead of the quaternion. Mostly because I only have to use the y-axis then. And with the quaternion you have to, as you can see, do 2 axes. And if you use only one, it's easier to use modifiers and stuff, you will see in a second. So I'm just gonna use this one, keyframe it, and we're gonna push it open for here. Make sure that you rotate only over the y-axis. If you start rotating and you press y-axis once, you will see that you got a wrong axis. If you press Y again, you will get its local orientation, and that's the one we want. So keyframe that one, and it's gonna fall back, or it's gonna close again as well. Just go a bit further, press I again, and we're actually going to use the same thing here. We're going to use the bounce again. There we go. Going to do the same for the left side, but seeing as this one is about 38 degrees, I'm going to open this one a little bit less, just for a little bit of variation. Start this one on 0 and open it a little bit on the correct axis. Open it for 40 degrees. You can also type it if you want. And close it up again. And do the same here. Use the bounce. There we go. That's the first little jump. Now I'm gonna do another little jump, and this one is gonna make the cabinet face forward again. So this is the start of the jump, so we keyframe it again. And over here is the end of the jump, so we're gonna move it to how we want, which is almost straight again. And a little bit forward and a bit to the left. So let's try it like this. And we want to go up a little bit again. Let's try 9 centimeters this time. And rotate it again a little bit. Now this jump is way too slow. That's because this distance between these frames is too high. So we can go to the dope sheet. And the dope sheet is similar to the graph editor, only the dope sheet really just only shows the keyframes and not what they exactly do. But you can see here which keyframe it is. And we want to move this one, the whole keyframe, so every single one. As you can see, this is location, 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 rotation, 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 rotation. Those are the 7 properties that are currently keyframed. We can select them all by selecting the top one, and then we can move it using G. The dope sheet is a really useful way to manipulate the timeline. Now we go back to the graph editor again, and we're gonna make it jump again. As you can see, if I do this, then it also has some effect on the previous keyframe, and it will actually make it go a bit down, as you can see. We don't want that. How do you stop that? Well, there are different ways. One of it is put this left handle, as they call it, put it right on here. You can do that by typing. This is keyframe 30 and the y-axis should be 0. That's one way to do it, but it's cleaner to use the interpolation here. And let's try this one. Now it goes the wrong way, but if you change these, then you get what you want. And you can use these to determine the strength of the interpolation. I think this is fine. This also means that I'm gonna move this one a little bit further back. We're gonna make this one bounce again, and let's see how that looks. And there we go. That's pretty nice. Could move it a little bit more forward. Alright, let's do the doors again as well, because I really liked how that looked. So I'm gonna start here again, keyframe it. We don't actually have to keyframe every property, but it's really just something I tend to do because sometimes I forget and then it gets all messed up. It's really a personal preference. If you want, you can, because we only use this axis, you could just use single keyframes and use a single keyframe here as well. I'm gonna open this one a little bit further up. And close it again. This one as well. Open this one a little bit less. And close it again as well. Now let's use the bounce again because it just looks great. There we go. Alright, now we're gonna play a little bit with the drawers. I'm actually gonna slide this one a little bit open, this one a little bit further. Then we're gonna make the top one shake, be pushed out, float a little bit, and smashed back into it. Also moving the cabinet back to its original position. I want to move it back to the original position because then you get a clean loop. That's something very important for Planet Coaster animations. You have to make it a clean loop. Otherwise it's going to jump at the end of the animation and that just looks horrible. So whatever you do with the animations, make sure it loops. I'm going to start off by doing the bottom drawer. We're going to only slide it open on the y-axis. So I could just single keyframe it. And let's open it all the way up to here. I don't think we need to change that a lot. That's fine. That looks good. Go to the second one. It opens up a little bit later, but a little bit further as well. And then we're gonna make this one shake. Now, shaking is something you can do with noise, and that's a modifier. We have to first create a keyframe. I think we should start shaking about, this is fine. We're gonna keyframe all three of them, so basically just insert keyframes. And then we're gonna select drawer, open up the side panel if it's not open up already, and go to modifiers, add the modifier. You got a lot of options here, but for now we're going to use noise. Noise is, as you can see here, it just creates noise and it just shakes on the y-axis at this point. We don't want to shake it. As you can see, it just shakes over the whole timeline now. We don't want that. We can change that by restricting the frame range. We want to start at around 60 and we want to end around 120. And the other thing we want to do is I can show you a bit better if I increase the strength. We also want to fade in, basically. So this is the in and that's out. But we want to only fade in. So we want to fade in over 60 seconds because 60 through 120 is 60 frames. And now you can see that it's going to shake increasingly. If you're going to play it like this, it's going to shake immensely because I increased the strength. As you might see here, that's a bit much. And actually I don't want to shake it over the y-axis. Now we're going to just put it back on 1 for now. And you can copy modifiers using this button. You press it, you go to where you want to paste it, and you press the other button. So we're going to paste it on the x-axis and on the z-axis. Because I want to shake it in this direction and in this direction, but not in this direction. Just the y location is actually going to be removed. And let's see how that looks. Well, it could be increased a little bit more because now you can barely see it. So let's start. Let's try 2. It's not a copy. You copy it to it, but it doesn't remember the other settings. So if you change something in one, you have to change it in the other as well. Or you just copy this one, remove this one, and paste it again. That's another option. As you can see here, the noise is exactly the same. That's something you might notice when it shakes. It just shakes in one towards one axis. We can change that by changing the offset, and the offset just, as you can see, it drags it over the timeline. This way you can create a little bit more variation. So let's try it like this. And now it shakes more into different directions as well. At the end of the shake we want to make it flung out. So we're gonna, I think, yeah, at the end of the noise, so 120. on 120 we're gonna add a new keyframe, as well as for rotation, because we're gonna rotate it a little bit as well. And then we're gonna have it shoot out, which is something like this. To make it as clean as possible, it's best to type. I'm gonna keyframe that, as well as the rotation for now. Well, it kind of shoots out, but it can shoot out a little bit more. And that's in the same way we did the jump. So we want to select it. If you want to look at a specific moment in the timeline, you can select the keyframes you want to see and press the period key on the numpad. That will make it zoom in. We're gonna use interpolation again and use it the other way around, something like this. Now we're gonna make it float a little bit, and we're gonna start rotating as soon as it leaves the cabinet, which is here. Keyframe it again and keyframe it over here. Something like this. Once again, trial and error. As you might see, it's still rotating even though the Y location has already been reached. That looks a bit silly, if you ask me. And that's because you can see here it already reached its maximum in a very short time. We can change that by moving stuff around, basically, and move it until you get what you want. So something like this. And now we're gonna just make it levitate a little bit. So move it slightly up and down. And rotate it as well slightly. There we go. Move it a bit up again. Rotate it as well a little bit. And at this moment it's gonna be slammed back into the cabinet. So reset the location and orientation by putting everything to its original number. And once again, use the interpolation to get what you want. No, that's the wrong way. That can go a bit faster. So we're just gonna move it up a little bit. Like that. And because of the momentum, the cabinet is gonna be pushed back. So let's do that one now. The moment it hit is at 210. So we're gonna start animating again on 210. Let's put it on half a second, and as with the drawer, we're gonna reset it to its original position. Now it's just gonna slide towards it, and the momentum is also not transferred into the cabinet, and that's something you have to fix in the graph editor as well. There we go. That should transfer the momentum. And we're gonna make it jump up a little bit as well. Because we're also gonna rotate a little bit. Because it's being slammed into the top, we're gonna rotate it a little bit like this. But to do that, we also need to raise the cabinet a little bit. So we're gonna rotate a little bit over the x-axis. And then, because it's in the ground now, the green line is the floor. We're gonna push it up till it's on top of the floor. And we should only keyframe the y-axis, because otherwise the graph will be distorted. As you can see, you get really weird lines, and that will not be the effect we want. So really just only keyframe that one. Now these ones will go as before, and this one is added to it now. Gonna use the interpolation again to make sure that it jumps up. And let's make it bounce again. I find the rotation a bit off, so we're gonna just take a look at this one and see what we can do about it. We want to make it jumpy as well. And I'm not sure, we could use bounce maybe. Let's see how that looks. Just the edges are a bit hard. No, it's not really what I want. Could just simulate one bounce. The fact that it's really just bouncing like this is a bit much. We should not forget to also close these drawers as well. So let's do that now. I want to shoot those back in again as well. go. Now take a look again at the static one. There we go. It snaps back a bit too hard. Gonna add a keyframe by duplicating. And just add a little bounce to it. There we go. I'll just say it one more time, trial and error. It's really just what it's all about. And just figuring out what you want. Now there are a couple of limitations that you need to make sure that you stay within. So for example, the object and the animations can be bigger than 8 meter by 8 meter by 8 meter to simulate. This is an 8 meter cube, so we really got a lot of space still left. But make sure that you're inside it. Planet Coaster looks for the biggest dimension during the animation, so that would be this one. So that will do it for this part. The next part, final part, is gonna be export. And in that tutorial I'm gonna cover everything from setting up the level of detail meshes all the way up to different textures you want to use, as well as setting up an icon and setting up the package correctly and uploading it to the Thememaker Toolkit website. So that's gonna be a whole lot to cover, but I think a lot of people will actually find it useful. If you want to be notified for that next tutorial, please subscribe and also like this video. That would be very much appreciated. And if you want to support me, you can go to the Patreon website in the description, and that will do it for now. So thank you and bye bye.